I'm glad that my video reviews of game books or branching fiction has been well received. There is interest in the forum, so I decided to make more videos about this kind of text. And today I want to tell you about To Be or Not to Be by Ryan North. It came out in 2013. It was originally a Kickstarter project, and I don't know about now, but at the time it was simply the most backed, the most funded editorial publishing project on Kickstarter. So you know that there is interest for branching fiction, for interactive fiction, when you have a project that is this successful. Of course, it is also associated with a famous name, but still, not everything that comes out with a famous name per se attracts so much interest. And if it was just a matter of people from Generation X being nostalgic about the old game books of the 80s, then they would just buy a book, one of the old editions on eBay. There's clearly something different, and thanks to the huge support that it received, the book could come out in such a beautiful format, in a big tome. And again, you know that the form is in good health when some of the longest game books ever written are coming out these days. And it also, thanks to all the funding that received, the book could be published with a large gallery of illustrations from a lot of different authors. Basically, what happens is that each time that you die, instead of just having the text telling you, well, you die here, or maybe you don't die, maybe it's another interesting ending. Every time that you reach an ending, the text doesn't have the end at the bottom of the page. It directs you to a page that will simply say the end, nothing else, but will be paired with an illustration depicting, commenting the type of end that you receive. As you can see, there are illustrations in many different styles, representing many different things, and look at just the variety of styles. This is a beautiful volume. It's fun and just pleasant to have in your hand, and it is also beautiful from all points of view. Definitely very high production values. Now, as for the story, I may have called it, let's talk about the structure first. I may have called it Gamebook, but to be more accurate, this is a purely narrative interactive book. By Gamebook, usually I prefer to refer only to books that have some game mechanics, like the fighting fantasy books, Lone Wolf, Way of the Tiger, where you roll dice, you have stats, you have to keep an inventory, you have a health value that goes up and down, where you have some game mechanics involved. This is a purely narrative book in the style of the choose your own adventure books. So you have a story that is told in the second person, so that the reader ideally is playing the role of the protagonist, and from time to time, quite often actually, the reader is offered choices, and based on the choice that you make, you are directed to specific passages, so that the story will continue in a way that was affected by your decisions and selections. What is interesting here is that this is a retelling of Shakespeare's Hamlet in interactive form and in a parodic form. That is, it's not just that you get to play as Hamlet and to make different decisions from the ones that the character made in the original play. Also, the entire tone is very amusing. The entire story is told in prose to start with, so much easier to understand too. And it is told with a contemporary and ironic sensibility. The author is talking to you. You hear the voice of the author breaking the fourth wall all the time, to the point that there is virtually no fourth wall here. It's almost continuously a conversation between you and the author. And the tone is very relaxed, laid back. The author makes fun of you. The author mocks you very often if you make the wrong choice. And sometimes you make the right choice and the author still doesn't like it and mocks you. There are even times when the author says, look, this choice is just so silly. I go to that other page because you don't deserve to continue along this plot line. It happens in one case if you're playing as Ophelia and you mess up so much that the author says, look, Ophelia is such a cool character, I can't let you ruin this character so much, go and play as Hamlet for a while. Yes, and as I said, you can play as one or the other because, interesting enough, there are three possible characters that you can play in this book. You can be Ophelia, you can be Hamlet, or Hamlet Jr., that is described as an emo teen in his early 30s Also, he's the Prince of Denmark. Or you can play as Hamlet Senior, who is the dad and who dies pretty much after a couple of paragraphs, and you're just there. If you play as Hamlet Senior, you're there taking a nap. Somebody pours cold poison in your ear, and the text says like, and that that doesn't wake you up because that never happens. That's the most natural thing. Who knew that poison could be delivered in that way without waking up people? And after you die, you become a ghost, where you can choose whether you want to disappear into nothingness nihilistically that way, or you want to become a ghost, and then several possible adventures happen. Um, so you're given that choice, which really looks like kind of one of the choices that you have in some good old game books. You can choose to be a mage or a warrior or have certain equipment. You can choose your own profile as you're playing the game. And very often the book does make references to game mechanics. For example, when you're choosing your characters, the text does tell you about the advantages and disadvantages of each in game mechanics. For example, Hamlet has +1 resistance to magic, but there's no magic in this adventure, so this never gets mentioned again. Hamlet Senior has +1 to leading men in battle and napping. Ophelia has a +1 bonus to science, but she also has a -1 weakness against water, so heads up. All these things mean absolutely nothing. The game has no game mechanics. Several times you'll say like, oh, if you were to roll this, then you get a bonus or a penalty. It's part of the joke that this book is also designed to look as a game book with game mechanics and to make references to game culture, while there's absolutely no game mechanics in it. It is a purely narrative story. And as you can see from the things that I told you here already, this is an extremely amusing, extremely entertaining book. I could just give you some examples. First, as soon as I choose one, that would have one in my mind, and that would make me think, oh, I wish I had selected that one. It's just so fun to hear, to read the story of these characters that are so far from us, so detached from our reality, both because of the lofty approach that tragedy has to plot to start with, and also because the story is such a classic that it kind of like creates a sense of reverence in us, a sense of awe. It's such an almost superhuman work of creation. It's up there in the Olympus of human creativity, that either you really just bow down and you simply kneel in reverence, or you make fun of it, because actually this is the most natural reaction that you have when something is so serious, has acquired such a high status in culture. Then it's precisely when parodies become fun and exciting, and this is precisely what happens here. Just to hear about that plot, those characters, that story talked about in the way that two friends would used to talk to each other and while mocking each other, that already is incredibly refreshing. What is also good about To Be or Not to Be, well, the title already tells you, wow, look at that, there was a choose your own destiny right there in the original text. And what I really like about this book is that it actually is pretty insightful, meaning the author did take some time to read the book very well and to think about the implications of each scene, the implication of the text, the story, the psychology of the characters. What I'm trying to say is that it's absolutely funny, hilarious, and it's based a lot on anachronisms. Ophelia can go on holiday to England, and then this text becomes a dating simulator for a while, and there are constant references to things that happen in modern society, and that also is part of the fun. But at the same time, there are a lot of what ifs, of choices that are insightful and interesting, because they look like things that could have happened. So actually, the text kind of like shows you what happened in the story that we all know, not just as well that is the way it should have been. That is the way this incredible masterpiece materialized, descending from the sky, already fully formed, like Athena that was born in armor already. Well, it shows you that there was an author that made certain choices to structure the story in a certain way, and if different choices had been made, then the story would be very different, and there would be a completely different outcome. The story would have a different feel. For example, I'll be honest. Of course, I knew the story of Hamlet before. Watched movies, watched them. I saw it at the theater. I read the text more than once. Uh, and I never realized how incredibly masochistic Hamlet is. How he constantly procrastinates from making the easiest, the obvious decision of simply slaughtering his stepfather, simply murdering him, stabbing him in the back, and that's it. I didn't realize that there was this procrastination, almost I would say self-destructive element, that Hamlet could solve the situation very easily, and he keeps hesitating. So it does add that again, almost self-destructive quality to the character, who's always looking for the worst possible scenario, telling himself that he wants to avenge the father, wants to straighten things out, wants to heal the rotten land, etc., etc., but at the same time keeps not doing that, keeps being afraid, scared, worried, simply avoids and comes up with silly excuses for not solving the story. The fact that the story goes all the way to its famous final tragedy where everybody dies, in a way, it's hard to get there. The text, if you want to play the story as it was, it's almost hard to get there. So many times you have so many options to end the story in much better ways for Hamlet and for everybody. For example, you're offered the choice of going and murdering your stepfather. What's going to happen to you? You're going to be the king of Denmark after that, and who's going to prosecute you? So that's one of the things. And the author several times asks you, would you like to go and kill your stepfather? And there is one time later in the book, if you procrastinate a lot and you finally decide to do it, the text says something like, oh, well, I'm glad you finally received the embossed invitation. It took you a while to finally listen to me and go do the obvious thing. Oh yeah, there will be some spoilers in this review. So keep watching at your own risk, and sorry for the spoiler I gave you. There are other there are the plot lines where Hamlet simply decides to go to college in England and then starts a new life, or simply has sex with Ophelia and they start dating and they're very happy together. The stepfather is old, and the mother is also old, so they're not going to have any new kids. After a while, the stepfather dies. Hamlet becomes the legitimate king of Denmark and everybody is really happy. So the fact that Hamlet is stuck between his desire of revenge and his inability to complete the revenge is something that is an insight that I gained. I appreciated how important that is in the original text. As I was having absolute fun, I was enjoying reading this book. I was laughing and smiling, and I was still getting to appreciate certain angles and certain elements of the original text. This is what a good parody does. A good parody is always an act of interpretation. It's not just an act of denigration. This is a text that makes fun of the original text, helps you not to take it too seriously, and actually also gets you to think about it. Another absolutely delightful thing, how this is both a parody of old branching books, by, for example, making references to game mechanics that are not used. Another way in which this book is both a parody and an homage to the old books is this section here. There's a section in the book which is called The Murder of Gonzago, subtitled The Adventure is Being Chosen by You Story. Can you murder your brother Gonzago and then, playing as your dad, brother, son, murder your usurping uncle? And so there is an entire section of the book which reproduces, ideally, a sort of choose-your-own-adventure book. And the story is about a guy called Battlelord Pete who has killed, or is considering murdering, his brother and taking his place. How is this part of the story? If you play as Hamlet and you go as far as getting to the scene, the original play is the play that is supposed to reveal Claudius' guilt. Here what happens is actually Hamlet gives this choose-your-own-adventure book to Claudius. It's a choose-your-own-adventure book that depicts a story that is very similar to the murder that Claudius committed and the usurpation that Claudius committed. So now you play as Claudius, you the reader become Claudius, you're reading that book, while Hamlet is watching over your shoulder and looking for your reactions, because, well, he wants to see if you, as Claudius, who is reading a Choose Your Own Adventure, would choose to murder your father, your brother. So basically, the role of the revelatory play in the original Hamlet is taken over, is delegated to a Choose Your Own Adventure. Again, big spoiler here, but this is too funny. I had to share with you. Here, you're given the chance between to go kill your brother, or you'd rather kill skeletons. Yeah, this battler Pete really likes to kill skeletons. Let's say that you decide to kill your brother, then the text switches from the Choose Your Own Adventure book to what's happening in the court of Denmark, where Claudius is reading the Choose Your Own Adventure book. You choose the go kill your brother option. Behind you, Hamlet seems to get interested in your choices. Wait a second, you remind yourself that you did actually just kill your brother, and so maybe reliving the murder in front of the court through the medium of high literature is not the greatest idea. So the options are now: say, oh wait, I meant to choose the skeleton thing, and turn to that page instead, or the other options: onward to adventure and also murder, and so on and so forth. It's a beautiful homage to the two classic forms of branching literature: the Choose Your Own Adventure in its simplest form, and through that the hilarious, humorous references, a homage and an homage of and a parody of Gamebooks. This image is just too awesome. To Be or Not to Be by Ryan North. It's a beautiful book. As an item, it's already, like, production-wise an excellent thing, an excellent item. And it's such a fun text. I enjoyed it immensely. I don't know that I read every page, but I just loved exploring all of the secret rooms and all of the possible branches of these trees. 3 characters, Hamlet being the main one, but really do not miss on Ophelia and Hamlet Sr. There are some really hilarious things to be experienced in those plot lines. It's fun. It has a very erudite book so it's super hilarious. But again, who knows? Maybe even if you're not trying to, you may still get 1 or 2 insights, 1 or 2 ideas about the original text. Really fun, really enjoyable. I recommend it to everybody who has an interest in branching books, interactive fiction. But really, if you just like literature, if you have ever heard about this thingy that is called Hamlet, that has been around for quite a while, this is an hilarious, insightful, and really enjoyable take on that classic text.